if a good is a public good, there should generally be some sort of case you could argue for it being funded by yeah, by the public sector, right? But there are a few drawbacks to state media, specifically surrounding, provision of accuracy. We know that historically speaking, a lot of state media has not necessarily been the most reliable and accurate material. So I think that's quite a kind of I think that is quite an interesting one to sort of think about. And we can just make a note of this briefly. So, so we can sort of say, Russia, um, Russia and the US, both produced large amounts of propaganda. Oh, sorry, uh, in the news. That was unjustified, right? And unfounded. The only reason they did it was simply to, um, they published it because it had a very wide sort of spread reach to the people to the the state people. Yeah, so they pushed it because it had a very widespread reach to the state people. Um, and they kind of knew that they could build a market out of the whole thing, you know. Um, so it had a widespread reach of state people, and could and it could collectively um, ensure control at the state level, let's say. Okay, we could collectively ensure control at the state level. Now, the other thing to think about, which I've written here, is state media can occasionally behave in a biased manner during an election cycle. So what do we mean by an election cycle? We're essentially just talking about the situation where it's in the lead up to an election, right? We're kind of like for example, in the States, we're gearing up for the US presidential race in the States, which is pretty major. Once every 4 or 5 years, they have to elect their new president, and that is an incredible sort of moment because that is while the country only has a population of 300 million, it is the most powerful country in the world when it comes to military. Okay, it does have the most powerful military in the world. So that is sort of kind of something to be perhaps just wary of, really. So, but the point is state media can sometimes be biased towards the incumbent state. So we have to be thinking in our minds about, whether or not we will whether or not we will see that, is the state media is the state media necessary does it necessarily keep it straight, or does it deliberately kind of bias, does it deliberately kind of end up with a kind of biased skew towards the sort of private, the more sort of like private income, who's funneling the most money into the state, right? That's the idea of what we're going to look at.